Okay, welcome back, everybody. Now we're up to chapter 4 of Tanya. Very, very exciting. We're going to get to know the godly soul even more intimately. And this is part of you. The reason we're doing this is to get to know ourselves for the purpose of being our best friend, helping ourselves navigate life as God created us to be, doing so with compassion on ourselves and doing so with compassion on the others. So this soul that we're going to get to know even more is apparent. It's something that exists in all people, all Jewish souls. And it's just something that we need to refine ourselves to bring it to the surface. We're just trying to uncover it because it's already there. All of our soul powers are already within us. We don't need to go to the moon and back, which is something Miriam likes to say. It's not something we have to go on a whole journey of take like 2 years out of our life to go find ourselves. Really, it's all here. We just need to learn to go layer after layer after layer to uncover this. So now we're going to get to know what this is, this soul, a bit more than we have already. So, chapter 4, in addition to its 10 faculties, which we discussed in chapter 3, every divine soul, nefesh elokis, possesses 3 garments. The soul possesses 3 auxiliary powers, which are its instruments of expression. Like garments, they can be donned or shed at will. When the soul utilizes any of these 3 powers, I'm very sorry. Let me put this on mute. When the soul utilizes any of these 3 powers, it is clothed in them. When it doesn't use them, it's divested of them. Also, just as garments give expression to their wearer's beauty and importance, so too, when the soul dons and utilizes these garments, its intellect and emotion find expression. So again, we talked about the idea of garments before. And like Amanda said last time, you can actually, because they're garments, you can put them on, but you can also take them off. And we're learning that these garments, when we're clothed in them, right, when we put them on, our godly soul, when it puts on its own clothes, then it's like clothing. It makes it beautiful. It makes it, protected and express itself. Those are 2 things that garments do. They protect our body, but they also help us to express ourselves. So this is part of the expression of the soul and its protection. And here it says it gives expression to the intellect and the emotion of the godly soul. So the garments are thought, speech, and action, right? As they find expression in the 613 commandments of the Torah. Because again, the godly soul, right, has its own garments. The garments that it dons are to do with the Torah, right? Its garments are of the Torah and using the Torah through thought, speech, and action. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to explain how the divine soul expresses itself through these 3 garments. For when a person actively fulfills all the precepts which require physical action, for example, when he dons the tefillin or fulfills the commandment of tzitzis, and with his power of speech, he occupies himself in expounding all the 613 commandments and the laws that govern their fulfillments, i.e., the person's speech is immersed in the study of Torah. Remember, speech is one of the garments, which includes the exposition of the commandments. For example, Tractate Brachot in the Gemara deals with the commandments and the laws of blessings. Tractate Shabbat in the Gemara deals with the commandments and laws of Shabbat observance, etc., etc. Any Torah that you learn, that you're immersing yourself with, which include the 613 commandments, is using your power of thought, your power of speech. And when you're doing the mitzvah, you're using the power of action. And these are the garments of your soul. And this is how you're donning your soul with its holy garments. And with his power of thought, like I just said, he comprehends all that he's capable of understanding in the Pardes, which are the 4 levels of Torah. So this is really amazing because actually, as we're going to find out, the word Pardes, whose literal meaning is orchid, is here used as an acronym for the Hebrew words Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod, meaning Pshat is the plain sense of the Torah, like the simple meaning. Remez is the intimation. Drush is the homiletical exposition. And Sod is the esoteric mystical meaning, the essence of the Torah. So these 4 levels are the 4 levels of interpretation of the Torah. And right, so when we learn in this way Torah, then we're tapping into different levels, and we're putting on these holy garments for our soul. Then all of his soul's 613 organs are clothed in the 613 commandments of the Torah. That's really beautiful. Because we learn, what does this mean? 613 organs of the soul. Just as the human body consists of 248 organs and 365 blood vessels, corresponding to the Torah's 248 positive commandments and 365 prohibitive commandments, 613 in all. The soul similarly comprises 613 organs, the spiritual counterpart of the 613 bodily organs, each organ corresponding to a specific commandment. When, through its 3 garments, thought, speech, and action, the soul embraces all 613 commandments, then all 613 organs of the soul are enclosed in all 613 commandments, each organ of the soul in its related commandment. So basically what we're learning here, and actually the Zohar goes more into this, Sha'arei Kedusha, written by Rabbi Chaim Vital, the most prominent and the closest student of the Arizal himself, big time Kabbalist, revealed a lot of secrets into our world. We're very lucky. So again, his Torah was of the Sod, so of the secrets. Remember Pardes, so it was the last level, the mystical, deeper inner secrets of the Torah, which talks about the world and ourselves and everything. So what we learn in Sha'arei Kedusha is basically how, just like a tailor, when you go to a tailor, he puts together and he makes a customizable shirt, coat, dress, whatever it is, to fit your specific form. That's exactly what Hashem has done, like a tailor, to the godly soul, to the soul, the godly soul, right? So our godly soul is who we really are. And our body is just like a garment that is covering it. So everything we see on our physical body relates to our godly soul. Like there's a reason why I have eyes, because my godly soul has the faculty of sight. So in order to express that, I need a garment that will correspond to that. Similarly, every single part of my body, including my 248 organs of my body and the 365 blood vessels of my body, are just an expression of the true me, the godly soul, which has also 248 organs and 365 veins, right? And each of the 365 veins correspond to the Torah, a specific part of the Torah. All the 365 prohibitive commands. All the positive commandments Hashem gave us correspond to our godly souls, 248 organs of our soul, right? 248 mitzvot, positive mitzvot, correspond to 248 organs of our soul. And the same with the body also, because it's just a garment, just something covering, which means it's a reflection and expression of our soul. So Torah it's a part of us. It's really important. And there's so much more to learn about that. Shara Kedusha is an amazing book. Let's just move on from now. Okay, so we've said here, the soul embraces all 613 commandments through putting on its 3 garments, by learning Torah, thinking of it, by speaking it, and by acting, involving yourself in doing a mitzvah. And when it does all 613 of them, all the prohibitive ones that correspond to the veins, and all the positive ones that correspond to the organs, then the entire soul is enclosed in all of this godliness. Note that the Alter Rebbe's emphasis of the word all the precepts which require physical action in expounding all the 613 mitzvot, all that he is capable of understanding, right? So the Alter Rebbe has used all a lot. Should his garments fail to include all 613 commandments, were he to omit one specific commandment, then the corresponding organ of that soul will remain bereft of its mitzvah, of its garment. Thus, we see in a general sense how fulfillment of all the commandments with one's thought, speech, and action clothes the entire soul in all 613 commandments of the Torah. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to specify which components of the soul are clothed by which particular garment. Specifically, the Chabad of his soul, i.e. his intellectual faculties, are clothed in the comprehension of the Torah, which he comprehends in the 4 levels of pardes of the Torah to the extent of his mental capacity and according to the supernal root of his soul. And we're going to learn that one's mental capacity determines how much he may understand. So I may not understand Torah on the same level and as much, I can't absorb as much as, let's say, a Talmud Chacham right next to me, like all these tzaddikim, Rabbi Sachs or Rabbi Label Wolf or whoever these people are, right? Because, so that's our mental capacity, but also the root of your soul determines the area in Torah for which you'll have the greatest aptitude. For example, a person whose soul is related to the level of pshat, the simple meaning, is more likely to comprehend the straightforward meaning of the words of the Torah. A soul related to the remez will delve to the stratum of implied meaning, which underlies the words of the Torah, of the pshat, and so on, right? When the person comprehends Torah to the extent of his mental capacity, then the Chabad, his intellectual powers, the components of his soul, are clothed in the garment of thought of Torah, i.e. thought as it is related to Torah. So it's really cool. It's telling us another secret that our souls actually come from different places. It's not just that, we really can't compare ourselves to others, and we can't, use it as a tool to put others down, or chas v'shalom to put ourselves down, because this is telling you, even more so from what we've already learned, there's more distinction and more complexity that goes into a human being, that our neshama actually is rooted in different places. So a person who relates more to Torah on a mystical level doesn't make that person any better than a person who relates to Torah on the simple factual level, right? These are just different places where their soul has been taken from. And they have so much to fulfill in that level that they're at. But as long as they're involving themselves, their mind, in the study of whatever part of Torah that they really resonate with, then this is fulfilling, using their garment of thought for the mitzvot, to clothe their godly soul. And the midot, namely the emotions of fear and love of the Almighty, together with their offshoots and ramifications, are clothed in the fulfillment of the commandments, in deed and in word. in word, meaning in the study of Torah, which is the equivalent of all the commandments. The Alter Rebbe's previous statement that in comprehending Torah, the soul's faculty of intellect clothes itself in thought, it requires no further elaboration. It goes without saying that the intellect can comprehend Torah only through the vehicle of thought. Makes sense. His latter statement, however, that the midot are clothed in the fulfillment of the commandments in deed or in word, requires further amplification. What connection do the midot of fear and love have with action and speech? Right? Because fear and love are emotions. So why is he connecting to that to you know, things that's not in the intellect, that's not to do with feelings and thought, that's action and speech. So the seat of the emotions is in the heart. How do they come to clothe themselves in actions which are done with one's hand, for example, in donning tefillin, you know, or in speech where one uses his mouth, such as when learning out loud Torah study. So in answer to this question, the Alter Rebbe explains that completeness in the performance of the commandments demands love and fear of God. One can bring to his fulfillment of the commandments the fullness generated by vitality and depth of feeling only when he is imbued with fear and love of the Almighty. That's amazing. So in order to really fulfill these mitzvot, these commandments, there's an element of using your heart, right? Using the fiery passion of the heart to fear and love Hashem, which isn't something you have to look for. It's something that already exists. Again, even if you don't feel it, it's there. It's a matter of uncovering it. And, you know, intellectually knowing that it's there to try to connect with it and do and say and think based on it. So it's only when love and fear are generated, right, in the feelings that complete the commandments that you're doing, that you're fulfilling. So in the Alter Rebbe's words, love is the root of a Jew's observance of all the 248 positive commandments. From it, they issue forth, and without it, they have no true substance. For he who fulfills them in truth is he who loves God's name and who truly desires to cleave to him. Now, one cannot truly cleave to him except through the fulfillment of the 248 positive commandments. Thus, one's love of God and desire to cleave to him dictate that he observe the commandments. Why is it possible to cleave to God only by fulfilling the commandments? For they are the 248 organs of the king. Ooh, let me go back. That's a quote from the Zohar. Organs of the king, of God, king of the universe, as it were, as explained elsewhere. Just as each of the organs of a human being is a vessel for the particular soul power that clothes itself in it, i.e., the eye is a vessel for the power of sight, the ear for the hearing, and so on, so is each commandment a vessel for the specific aspect of God's will, the supernal will, which clothes itself in that particular commandment. Wow. Each commandment expresses not only the supernal will that a specific act be carried out, but also the particulars of its observance. Thus, it is understood that by performing the commandments, one achieves unity with God, whose will they express. So just a little bit of an explanation. It's saying basically just like a tailor creates a garment for the body, right, for a person who comes in to get a fitting, Hashem created our body as a garment around our godly soul, around our soul. So just in that way, like we said before, everything, who we truly are, everything that we have the ability to express into the world, for example, our sight, our smell, our speech, our taste, or whatever it is, those are all just, those are all the powers of the soul that get expressed through my mouth, through my nose, through my eyes, through my ears, right? The same way, the real truth of the Torah is Hashem, right? He's the inner essence. And there's this covering on top of him that's been custom made to hold him and to be able to express him, just like we express through our body. So it's telling us that the Torah is the expression of godliness, of God. So it follows then that, first of all, that performing the commandments, we're achieving unity with God, right? Because they're expressing his will. It follows then that that love of God clothes or expresses itself in one's performance of the 248 positive commandments. It is their root and the life force, which leads one to observe them with the totality of one's being. For when one loves God and desires to cleave to him, he'll perform his commandments as he would perform a task for a dear friend, with delight and zest and with all of his being. So this is telling us the emotion that actually lies behind the 248 positive commandments. Again, we learn that everything is connected. So emotions, like the most basic emotions that we learned in the last chapter, love and fear. Love corresponds to all the positive commandments like we just went through, and they have their own expressions, right? Things that come out of love, like the offshoots of it. And when we are involving ourselves with these commandments and imbuing ourselves with the emotion of love and wanting to cleave to Hashem, then we're giving it a superpower, boost of strength, like we're pressing that booster button to like just go zoom. And it completes the whole garment, the whole process. Fear is the root of one's observance of the 365 prohibitive commands. For he, the God-fearing person, will fear to rebel against the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be he, by acting in defiance of his will. He will therefore refrain from anything that God forbade. At this level, the word fear is taken in its simple sense, trepidation before the severity of God's command. Or a deeper level of fear, that he feels ashamed before God's greatness, so that he will not rebel against the all-seeing eye of his glory by doing what is evil in his eyes, namely, any of the abominable things hated by God, which are the klipot and the sitra achra, the side that anything to do with opposite of holiness. And again, we learned about the klipot last time. Previously, I'm not sure which class we learned about them. But klipot and sitra achra, which is where it comes from, draws its nurture from man below in this world. And they have their hold in man, so that they're able to derive their nurture and their life force through him violating the 365 prohibitive commands. Right? Because again, God created everything and he created a system that works perfectly. That even in his infinite goodness, there is actually the ability to have the antithesis of goodness. It takes a lot. It means that God's really amazing. And we went through that in another class, how that was able to happen. But something for us to know, again, is that ultimately everything gets its life force from God somehow. So having said that, it doesn't mean that everything's good and we should be able to do everything that God prohibits because it exists as an entity, which means that it's good. No, there's definitely definitive lines of good and bad and things to do and things not to do, like we learned in the 365 prohibitive commands, which correspond to our physical and spiritual makeup, that there are things that we're not supposed to involve ourselves with. Otherwise, it will cause spiritual sickness to ourselves, which will stop up the veins in our soul. so that we don't get the nutrients that we need. When a person transgresses a prohibitive commandment, God forbid, he provides the klipot with additional strength and vitality. Since klipot and the sitra achra are entities which conceal godliness and holiness and are as such despised by God, the Jew therefore guards himself against transgressing. He is ashamed to transgress and to give the klipot strength and life. Thus, fear of God clothes itself in the observance of prohibitive commandments. For one's fear of God enables him to withstand temptation and to refrain from transgression. We now understand clearly how fear and love of God are related to the fulfillment of the commandments and how the midot are the root and life force in the performance of the commandments. So this is basically telling us that when we, because they're the opposite of godliness, of holiness, they need their life force from something, higher than they are, right? Because we all get sustained by God, by something higher than us. So they can't get it from the same source. They're not vessels of godliness. So they get it through us, right? So every time we sin, every time we slip up, we actually give them life force. So that's what, some people, Gedalia Fenster talks about it a lot. How a person may be causing his own despair. He may be causing his own negativity to surround him. And what's this negativity? This negativity is the klipot and the sitra achra, like these demons, shadim, that he creates through his actions, through his actions of doing something he's not meant to do, that Hashem said don't do, for your own benefit. So what he does is he creates an entity that eats him alive, that needs sustenance from him, so it'll keep draining him and dragging from him. And it's this person who gives him life. It's not another person. So if you create something out of your negative thoughts, negative actions, negative speech, specifically where you've gone against one of the prohibitive commands, then you've created an entity that needs you to sustain it with continuously doing these things. So a person will easily find himself going into a spiral because it just gets bigger and bigger, just becomes more and more. So it's not something to be afraid of. It's something to understand that this is what happens. Because with this understanding, you have the ability to choose and to move on with your desire. Because again, everything comes down to desire, right? So if we rectify our mind and our thinking and, understand what's going on, look, God, I have this issue and I need help with this. I want to move forward and not nurture these things. I want to break that. I want to stop that. I want to, starve them and not have them feed off of me. I don't want to be a victim to my own spiral of darkness. Then you'll get there. You will get there. And it's a process of what we're doing now, right? By dressing up your soul in its garments. Until now, it has been explained that the divine soul has three garments in which it clothes itself: the thought, speech, and action of Torah and the commandments. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to state that unlike physical garments, which are less important than their wearer, the garments of the divine soul are even loftier than the soul, which wears them. Thus, wearing its garments, i.e., thinking and speaking words of Torah and acting in performance of the commandments, elevates the soul to a higher level. For since Torah and the commandments are one with God, the Jew, by donning the garments of Torah and the commandments, also becomes united with God. That's amazing. So it's saying basically like these thoughts, speech, and action, these garments of the soul are really incredible gifts, right? Because they're even holier than we are. They're much more holier than we are. So it's the opposite. Like when we're putting on the garments of the divine, right? Then we're elevating ourselves to a higher level. Whereas Whereas, like we talked about the klippot, the things that we create out of our, doing the wrong things, then those things end up sucking our life force, draining us, because they're lower than us. We're holier than them, so they need sustenance from us. So we can actually put on holy garments and get the sustenance we need, rather than being drained by something we can't even see, right? Now, these three garments deriving from the Torah and its commandments, though they are called merely garments of the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, nevertheless, the quality of the garments of Torah and its commandments is infinitely higher and greater than the nefesh, ruach, and neshama themselves. So that's saying the same thing, that the different levels of our soul are, as holy as they are in themselves, the garments are even holier. For as explained in the Zohar, Torah and the Holy One, blessed be He, like we learned before, they're entirely one. This means that since Torah is the wisdom and will of the Holy One, blessed be He, i.e. the wisdom of Torah expresses God's wisdom, its practical application and laws, whether or not a particular object is kosher, for example, that expresses God's will. And it is one with God's glory and His essence. Because as we learned in one of the chapters, He is the knower, the knowledge, and the known, as explained above in chapter 2, in the name of Rambam, that these three aspects, separate and distinct when we're talking about human intellect, when they relate to God, the knower, knowledge, and known, it's all the same thing. It's all God, godliness. So the Torah, being God's intellect, is thus one with God Himself. And when a Jew understands and unites himself with it, he is actually united with God. So from the above, we understand that since the garments of thought and speech of Torah study and the active performance of the commandments are united with God, they are even higher than the soul itself. However, a question presents itself. How can it be said that in understanding Torah, one comprehends God's wisdom and will, when God's wisdom, like God Himself, is infinitely beyond man's limited comprehension? This will be now explained. I think we'll just leave it there. So, a little bit of a cliffhanger. I want to get up a question like we did last time. Let me see if I can find it. Chapter 4. Okay, so the question is, are you ready to wake up and collect your garments, the Torah study and the mitzvahs, in order to be beautiful, like a bride, like a Kallah? So again, it's up to you, it's up to us to do those actions, right? Because no matter where we are, how low we feel, how low we've thought, acted, felt, spoken, we can always pick up a garment and wear it, and automatically we become holier. Automatically we change our essence and our place. And again, that's something to build up on. And the more of a muscle we build to strengthen ourselves in this way, then the easier it'll become. And we'll find that everything will just feel better and easier to deal with. Okay, we have less than 6 minutes. I'm going to do a quick meditation just to help allow all of this godly knowledge to settle into our brains and to move down into our heart, so that we can really be refined and keep that godliness in us. So now everyone just take a moment, close your eyes, settle into your chair, and just be present with yourself and your body. Be present with your soul, with both souls, and be present with God as you breathe Him into you, inviting Him inviting him into your mind, inviting him into your body, and inviting him into your souls. Breathing out all tension. Breathing in this godliness, this godly vitality. Invite your heart to start connecting with this love and this awe, fear of God. Imagine your soul, all of its faculties, and this beautiful gift that Hashem gave us of our body. Imagine each part of your body when it's been able to give to you the expression of your neshama. What a gift that you can bring that into your interactions with your children, your spouse, your friends, your colleagues. Feel yourself becoming more and more open, more and more free. As you look at the image in front of you, an image of the Torah, you notice the difference between the 248 positive commandments and this 365 negative, prohibitive commandments. And you see that God is shining through them. His will is shining through them, encased just as we are in the body. Imagine these letters just shining towards you. See yourself picking up the garment of thought, a holy, shining piece of clothing, as you start to read the Torah out loud, read these precepts. What we've been doing right now, using your speech to then add on another garment to cover another part of your body, your soul. And imagine finally with actions, you pick up the last garment and already you feel so much lighter, freer, happier. You feel taken, teleported to a different place, a place out of difficulty, out of your challenges. A place safer. As you continue learning the Torah, allowing these beautiful concepts to enter into your mind and become absorbed into your heart. Now feel this joy and happiness and feel the comfort of godliness surrounding you, protecting you, beautifying you. Now with this, come back to your place, to your seat. Slowly open up your eyes and find yourself here, back with us in the room. Beautiful. Now that was an extremely quick meditation. We have less than a minute, but does anyone have any quick questions or comments? No? Okay, lovely. Lovely. Hey. We can't hear you, man.